Askreddit by JMA 7400. Americans who are against the Biden student loan forgiveness. Why? I don't disagree with it per se, but without setting up systems to keep school costs in check, we will get this crisis to reoccur every few years as college costs keep skyrocketing. Before federal student loans were guaranteed, college was nowhere near this expensive. Yes, very much a treatment of the symptom, not the cause. Good point. Edit, FWIW. And so I don't have to respond to a ton of people. I was simply agreeing with the fact that it isn't treating the underlying issue. I'm absolutely in favor of loan forgiveness, however. Loan forgiveness doesn't make sense unless you also stop giving out the loans. Universities were able to increase their tuitions so much because everyone was getting guaranteed student loans. And now you're putting down precedent that the loans can be forgiven. Does that sound wise to you? Exactly this. Every person from that point forward will expect the same treatment because why shouldn't they? And now you make it so even more people will take out loans because they no longer worry about paying them back. This will just make the situation worse and screw everyone who isn't willing to fleece the system. I'm against it as a solution, because schools will still charge $100 a year and lenders will still keep making ridiculous loans. Yep. The debt is a symptom. The problem is the extremely large expense that has scaled far more than the rate of inflation. Fix the problem, not the symptom. If the actual student loan program were re-evaluated, loan forgiveness wouldn't be an issue. I think cutting the interest to 1% makes more sense. And stop the damn schools from instituting ridiculous tuition increases. My state school was $3,000 semester when I went there. Adjusted for inflation, that should be $5,500 now. For some unfathomable reason, it's $18,000 semester now. Students are getting hosed. I asked my coworker and he said I worked hard all through college and afterwards to pay it off and only went to college that I knew I could afford, and I think it's unfair that people go to overpriced colleges and are suddenly forgiven. I only disagree with it because it doesn't address the fundamental problem with these loans, which is the predatory interest rates that make them damn near impossible to pay off. The government should be regulating those rates so students aren't being gouged and can actually pay the loans off with reasonable interest. Edit. Just want to clarify, I'm pro loan relief. I just wish more was being done to address the core issue with these loans. But I would rather the government do something instead of continuing to do nothing. It also doesn't address college costs. The cost of higher education has far outpaced inflation for decades. This is especially problematic for public universities. Tie cost increases to inflation. Nothing is being forgiven. It is just being reassigned for others to pay. Amen. It's treating a symptom and sets an enormously bad precedent. I had someone tell me recently that they had their kid take out loans instead of using the money they set aside because of the chance of forgiveness. Solve the college cost problem first by reforming the loan system that encourages college bloat. From admin to amenities. Limit loans to X for an undergrad degree. You want to go to Stanford, pay up or get scholarships. Figure out how to subsidize the needy with a different and separate system. Those folks need as much help with living expenses as they do with college expenses. Reddit loves to compare college cost with Europe but doesn't compare the relative luxury of our experience. And they certainly don't have the ridiculous admin bloat. A college professor acquaintance of mine described the absolute flood of email from admin when covered it as a huge red flag of all the useless roles that exist in the system as these people try to justify their existence. They are an unnecessary part of the cost of a college degree. The idea of loan forgiveness also encourages borrowers to only pay their minimums until the loan is forgiven. That's generally the opposite of what they should do. Pay them off quicker so the interest doesn't compound as much. Because it won't change the for-more-profit mindset of the college system at all, and will maybe even make it worse in the very near future. Yes, it'll help tons of people now, But next week? Next year? Problem not solved. I'm against it because the government are speaking out of both sides of their mouth. If student debt was so bad that it should be forgiven, then why are the same loans being made to new students now? I'd have some capacity for the idea if it was done after the government putting an end to any new student loans, but that's not the case. At the end of the day, the student promised to pay the debt back, so they should do so. I know this is not a popular view, but it's quite an important moral in my view. That's not to mention that the taxpayer is going to be picking up the tab for this anyway, which is hardly a good idea when we struggle as a nation, financially, as it is. Because it doesn't address the primary issue that it claims to address, and there are way better options to address said issue. It's primarily a political bluff to win over young and emotional voters by insinuating there's a $10 check waiting for them if they vote Democrat in the next election. If you want economic relief, tax the rich more, tax corporations fairly, and regulate the healthcare industry to reduce prices. Any one of these three options have a high ROI for the average student, let alone average American. The debt doesn't magically vanish. Regular schmo taxpayers who in many cases skipped college themselves will be forced to pay the debts that others willingly agreed to. Where is this money coming from? It's the dumbest generation ever, and they keep getting dumber and dumber. And X200B. No need for student loan forgiveness. And X200B. And this isn't a solution. Try lowering the school costs instead. I'm not against it, but I think medical debt would be a more worthy debt to spend money on. Student loan debt isn't like subprime mortgage loans where people were lied to and deceived. Everyone with a student loan knows exactly what they signed up for, how much they owe, and how long it would take to pay at $XMO. We're also talking about a group of people right at the beginning of their money-making potential. The sky's the limit. Medical debt, on the other hand, has caused an alarming amount of people to not be able to make a reasonable wage anymore. Many have these debts through no real fault of their own, just bad luck. Not all, but certainly some. It seems unconscionable to me that we would prioritize young people at the beginning of their careers before people who will never be in a position to fix their situation. The government being a guarantor of student loans means that this debt falls on the taxpayer. The move to privatize education through loans is essentially another tax dodge of the baby boomers that own a large portion of the wealth in this country and now as a group represent an invested class who vote against anything that benefits those who work. We need government out of loans and watch college prices drop immediately. I also firmly believe that the government guaranteeing student loans and making them super easy to get has caused educational inflation. You didn't always need a bachelor's degree to get any generic office job. Part of the reason so many are in debt now is that we've made it de facto mandatory to go to college by making it super easy for basically anyone to go. We should be pushing trades more and college less. 1. It transfers the cost from the people who took out the loans to taxpayers who didn't. 2. It creates an expectation that this will occur for every new group of students. 3. It disincentivizes schools to reduce costs. A better option would have been to require schools to provide refunds, and to penalize schools for increasing costs. An even better solution would be to allow students to discharge the debt through bankruptcy. That would end the whole student loan fiasco once and for all. Edit. Added second solution. If loans were dischargeable through bankruptcy, the most expedient thing to do would be to graduate, declare bankruptcy, and just live with shared credit in your 20s. Also, the interest rates would necessarily be ridiculous, which are right now somewhat sane as far as unsecured loans go. I am not against one-time forgiveness for what's happened the last 25 years, but 3 other things need to happen for me to be in support of it. College needs to become cheaper. A degree has become less valuable over the last 25 years while becoming way more expensive. We need to remove the bloated admins at colleges that do little in directly impacting the quality of learning for students yet still fetch big salaries. Realistic expectations for low-income earning degrees, at least for students who do need to accept loans. There needs to be more honest conversations around post-college earning potential. Colleges should become less exclusionary. In the last 5 years I have been to the UCLA graduation ceremony and a University of Texas ceremony that had speakers with a talking point that bragged about how hard it was to get into the schools. Public institutions should set out with the goal to educate as many citizens as possible rather than brag about how hard it is to get into them. People shouldn't pay off debt that isn't theirs. 100% agree. Would sentiments about debt relief be the same if it were mortgage debt, credit card debt, auto loan debt?